All right, and we are going to pass it off to an interview. Take it away.
Hello, I am Fiesel, and I am here with Shiny Zenny, who just finished a run of Super Metroid 100%. Thank you very much for being here, and congrats on a great run.
Hey, thanks.
So I really did enjoy watching that. It's probably one of my favorite categories to watch. One of the things I think is really different about that is in Super Metroid, you're often very kind of underpowered, and you're just really trying to survive, but not so much in a 100% run, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are you really focusing on if it's not just like, survivability? Like where's your thoughts when you're playing that?
Yeah, so this kind of came up during the run, but kind of the focus on 100% for Super Metroid is, nailing some of those really hard movement strats through the rooms. You have a lot more options with the items that you end up picking up, like speed booster, space jump, spring ball, things like that. And so it makes some of those room strats very complex, and if you mess them up, then you lose a lot of time. So that's sort of where the focus goes. Kind of commenting on what you said about how there's a lot of other categories where the focus is on survivability. 100% Metroid games have always kind of been my favorite because you start off as this really bare bones version of Samus, and throughout the run you get more and more items where by the end of the game you're just completely overpowered, and that's a really cool contrast to me from where you start and where you end up finishing the run.
Yeah, you really see Samus evolve over the time, and I definitely get your point about when you're not limited to just a very small set of items, like the number of types of strats you can do in each of the rooms just balloons. And, the best possible strat, if you're really looking to squeeze the time, suddenly becomes, probably that much harder because there's just so many more options to you.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, also a lot of game content to optimize. I mean, it's a pretty big run as far as Super Metroid goes, right? Does that ever strike you, or is it just like any other run? You've got the route memorized and you just do it?
It is a bit of a longer run for sure than most other categories. It's not, I wouldn't say it's too long necessarily if you compare it with other speedruns like RPGs or, something like that. But a lot of people, when they run Super Metroid, they're used to running, any percent or, partial categories or some of the shorter ones that clock in between, 30 and 50 minutes, where 100%, usually when people start, they're, taking around 1.5 to 2 hours. And that can definitely, it can get taxing as you're going through it. It's easy to forget where you're going next, or, if you picked up a certain item or something like that. For me personally, 100% is actually where I started with Super Metroid way back in like the early 2000s. The first speedrun that I ever saw was 100% run by a runner named Red Scarlet. And that's kind of what got me interested in it. And so, back then I started like casually trying to copy those strats and see if I could improve my time and, stuff like that. And then in 2017, I just decided that I wanted to take it a little bit more seriously. I started streaming it, working on improving. And it was really cool to see how many more resources were available to the community at that time than when I had first started doing it. But yeah, I've always been a fan of 100%. And kind of to get back to the original question, because that was always my focus before, it wasn't so hard for me coming into it as a run when I started streaming, or more recently when I started grinding this again, just because I was already so familiar with the route and the routing possibilities and things like that.
Yeah, and I imagine it helps you with a lot of the other categories, especially like the bingo categories or the randomizer, where you really might be checking any or all of the item locations and stuff. Now, you've got you've got a bunch of runs. It looks like you got a bunch of different categories. Your first place in, what was it? Any percent glitched and some other category, RBO. And then like on the category extension boards, you got like first place in like most of the categories on there. So like what makes you like go so broadly and try all these different categories, and kind of like which ones do you like best?
I just love Super Metroid. It's my favorite game. It has been for a long time. I used to say that I didn't know whether I, preferred Super Metroid or Metroid Prime. But I finally ended up making that decision. This was years and years ago. Just based on the fact that I am a lot better at Super Metroid than I am at Metroid Prime. And so it's been fun because when I first started streaming Super Metroid again in 2017, I had only really done 100%. And I, spent a few months doing that, and then I realized I was getting kind of bored doing the same run every day or every other day or whatever it was. And I wanted to kind of branch out. So one of my friends recommended that I try RBO. So I did that, and it turned into another favorite category of mine. I grinded that until I got world record, and then I pushed it down even more. And then I actually had the opportunity to run that at SGDQ 2019, which was an incredible experience. After RBO, I put some focus in any percent, which I didn't enjoy quite as much as those two categories, but it certainly still has its place. Any percent glitched I did as a challenge run at the request of one of the tassers in the community who goes by Snick, and that was really fun to do. That's actually a really hard route and definitely not marathon safe. But I'd be willing someday to maybe submit a safer and easier version of that run because I think it's really cool. As far as the extension categories go, there are a lot of extension categories. Pretty much every extension category that I've ever touched, I basically played it until I got the world record, but those aren't nearly as prestigious. But there have been a few where I did a run and it was good and it was world record, and then Zost actually came in and he's like, I'm going to beat Zenny's time. And he just comes in and beats it like it's nothing because he's Zost and he's incredible. So, shout outs to that for sure. But there are a couple of really cool extension categories that focus on certain types of movement and goals that you just don't see in anything else. That's kind of the draw of those for me is just experiencing optimizing runs for different parts of the game that you don't usually see. So,
yeah, that makes sense. Some nice variety and let you see some new stuff. Well, thank you very much, Shiny Zenny, for talking with me today, and I really enjoyed watching that run.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. And as far as you and the rest of the staff goes, I hope that the rest of the marathon goes really well.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
Well, everyone stay tuned for some GTA Vice City up next with KZ Frew.
Thanks.